Yo, what's up, boys and girls? It's boy Swolelax here, and I'm back at it again with another video. Something a little bit different. Today, we're going to be talking about why red eyes will never, ever beat blue eyes. Now, I know this might ruffle some feathers a little bit, but let me just be objective and state the facts. And this video is going to be coming from a place of rage and heart because I like the red eyes deck. As a younger sibling, I know what it's like to play Luigi. I know what it's like to play as player 2, to not be able to get the cool bike in Kirby Air Ride. And so red eyes was my preferred dragon archetype. It was cool, it was dark, it was edgy, and I actually really do like the overall aesthetic, the card design, and somewhat of the themes of red eyes black dragons. However, nostalgia goggles and heartfelt messages aside, the blue eyes archetype is just strictly better in almost every single way. The core of this argument actually can go back all the way to prehistoric dueling times when you have to sacrifice for your monsters. Which one would you rather play? A 2,400 attack point body that requires 2 sacrifices, or a 3,000 attack point body that requires 2 sacrifices? Exactly. Now this may seem kind of obvious, but the red eyes archetype just straight up can't put out the massive amount of damage and the mass power that the blue eyes monsters can. Sure, the red eyes fusion cards and extra deck monsters are pretty powerful. 2,400 attack points isn't that bad, and you can equip them and do some special things to increase their attack points. But whenever you have a monster that is readily equipped and comes with that 3,000 damage, you don't even have to boost it, then you should and would rather be playing that archetype. Other than attack points, let's kind of break down the archetypes individually and see what the main difference is and why red eyes just sucks so hard. The blue eyes archetype is pretty versatile. You have strong cards, a lot of special summoning, and you have cards like the stones. Both White Stone of Ancients and White Stone of Legends are 2 incredible cards. They're also tuners that allow you to go into your synchro plays. In addition to that, they are searches, they are special summoners, and where you have the blue eyes eggs that are fast, they are versatile, you have the red eyes eggs, which are slow and require you to normal summon them. The red eyes egg allows you to normal summon it, tribute it, and special summon a red eyes from your deck, which is actually pretty neat. However, you are wasting that normal summon on this card. In addition to that, this card can be stopped by a lot of things. Add that on top of the fact that it's not a tuner and is not necessarily super synergized on top of this deck. You could almost cut this card out entirely and the deck's functionality and playstyle would be almost the exact same. And this is kind of a symptom of the entire red eyes archetype in general. When you look at cards like red eyes retro dragon or black metal dragon, you can see these cards here are supposed to complement the archetype, allow you to get a little more special summons out, and there's even the Gemini monster that is supposed to kind of be a pseudo red eyes black dragon when it's on the field or in the graveyard. However, I argue that the design of the deck is ultimately flawed here. Unless you're planning to totally redo the archetype, you don't necessarily want your new cards to completely replace the old cards themselves. And yes, these cards do technically complement the red eyes deck, but ultimately they're kind of clunky, they don't advance the playstyle anymore, making them a lot of times really bricky or just straight up too weak. Compare that to something like blue eyes. Now the blue eyes archetype is probably going to have a lot more support and a little more of an abundance of good cards just because Konami tends to push the Kaiba character a little more. However, the designs of these spell cards and the designs of these monsters reinforce and complement the vanilla blue eyes monster that we've been seeing since day one. They don't try to change it, they don't try to replace it. In fact, even a card like Blue Eyes Alternative Dragon, which in its name itself could be implied that it was supposed to replace blue eyes, requires and plays off of blue eyes itself. It is synergy. Now let's move on to the spell cards of each deck. For the red eyes archetype, you have cards like red eyes insight and red eyes fusion, which are pretty good fusion and search cards overall. However, red eyes fusion kind of sucks, so it makes it kind of useless. Pair that onto the fact that you are supposedly running 2 or 3 of these inside of every deck. This card can kind of bog down plays. Compare this to the blue eyes archetype, where you have cards like Melody of the Awakening Dragon, which searches your blue eyes. Cards like Trade-In, which is perfect for this archetype for draw power. Cards like Silver's Cry and Return of the Dragon Lords, which I know has some overlap with red eyes, but is significantly more powerful in blue eyes just because of that protection and that summoning that plays off the graveyard. In addition to that, you have cards like Dragon Shrine, which is not necessarily blue eye specific as well, but pair that with White Stone of Ancient or Legends to get search or special summon ability, and that card becomes super good inside the blue eyes deck. And I could go on. Most, if not all, the spell cards for the blue eyes archetype do something really good and do something really well. I will say that the red eyes archetype does have the upper hand when it comes to trap cards. And where I think the red eyes trap cards are kind of cool and can be really useful, they're trap cards. They're inherently going to be extremely slow, and if they get destroyed, then bada bing, bada boom, you don't get your effects. There is no need to have the slower mechanic bog it down. We'll get back to the main deck in a second, but let's move on to the extra deck just for a quick brief side note. Now, in my opinion, a good extra deck is supposed to exploit, reinforce, extend, and even somehow change the actual main deck and how the deck functions itself. And if it can, even better, add something new that the main deck was lacking. Let's look at Blue Eyes, for example. It does a perfect job with this. Not only do you have access to the rank 8 toolbox, but you also have access to these extremely strong Blue Eyes synchro monsters. These monsters offer protection with cards like Azure Eyes, or they offer some type of deterrent or defensive option with the other synchro cards. These cards also don't overstep and step on the toes of the main deck, because the main deck can output a lot of power, has no problem with special summoning, but it does have a slight issue with protection and defensive play. But that's where the extra deck comes in and adds on to it. It takes what the main deck does super well and builds upon that. Now compare that to something like the Red Eyes deck. The Red Eyes fusion monsters, first and foremost, are terrible to get out onto the field. They generally have lacking or lackluster abilities, and sure, they may have really good damage. They don't necessarily offer anything in the protection realm, and the defensive option in plays, you have one good card in the form of Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon. This card is absolutely insane, and the fact that it's generic is really strong. 2800 body is pretty powerful, its effects are nutty, burning your opponent anytime they activate effects is really good, especially with decks like Trickstar, or if they're just going off and doing a bunch of things. This by far is the go-to play in that deck and any deck focusing on rank 7 monsters. But that's it, that's the only one. And in fact, this card does other decks better than the Red Eyes archetype. Now let's go back to the main decks just for a little bit and talk about why at the end of the day, Blue Eyes is just a stronger archetype overall. The Blue Eyes archetype in its essence highlight the best and fastest parts of this game. Spell cards, powerful monsters, cool monsters, consistency, draw power, special summoning. And then let's take a look at Red Eyes. The Red Eyes archetype focuses on things like normal summoning and trap cards, and also lackluster fusion plays. You get my point? The Red Eyes archetype focuses on Gearfried and also focuses on Red Eyes Baby Dragon and Red Eyes Be Chick and that stone card it has. All of which have to be normal summoned to activate their effects. In addition to that, the trap cards are way too slow and the spell cards are way too lackluster. Add that on top of the fact that the extra deck doesn't necessarily help out the main deck, and you have sort of a problem. Now, Blue Eyes, on the other hand, are the complete opposite and are so much the better deck for that reason. And in fact, they were one of the best decks inside of an entire format. Blue Eyes is still really powerful, still really consistent. They have some exploitable weaknesses, but not nearly as much as Red Eyes. And if this wasn't enough, the Red Eyes deck is like 4 times as expensive for absolutely no reason. Each card is like $15 each, and it's incredibly stupid. For a deck that costs just as much, if not more, than Blue Eyes, you can get Blue Eyes incredibly cheaper and get so much better results from it. Essentially, the Red Eyes deck is just for collectors, just for people that's like, says, oh, I have 3 copies of Baby Dragon that I spent $60 on. Maybe that's where this rage is ultimately coming from, is my wallet. But I doubt it. I don't know. What do you guys think of it in the comments down below? Let me know. Do you hate Blue Eyes? Do you hate Red Eyes? Do you like Red Eyes? Do you hate Blue Eyes? What do you think would fix these two archetypes overall, or how would you improve them? Let me know in the comments down below. If you guys like this video, make sure to leave it a like. If you want to see more, please subscribe. Got a lot more videos coming in the pipeline, so stay tuned for that if you want to. But yeah, that's all I gotta say. Peace out.